what a good looking club there. I tell you, I just can't get sick of that opening. But folks, welcome again. Soaring Profits, Financial Fitness with Patrick, as always, your host. And bit of an odd day today, a little bit mixed emotions in regards to a lot of people's response to the conviction of former President Donald Trump today, 34 counts in regards to the Stormy Daniels case that out of New York City, Manhattan. A lot of people are very conflicted over this. I know a lot of people that were, hey, this makes sense. Any crime is a crime. We should be prosecuting that. A lot of people think that it's, an illegitimate prosecution. Guess we're going to see. But this is the state of our nation right now. This is the state of the world where we are right now. So, as we look at the market, we see NVIDIA over the last few days, the few weeks. Again, it's a straight up ship. I know a lot of guys are looking at trying to find footholds to short this in the short to mid term. And how do you short parabolic like this? It is just a rocket ship. You have to be ready when it's time, because eventually this is going to run out. We don't know when it is, but eventually it is. Bonds seem to be stable. We haven't had a lot in the bond market. Dollar, Canadians, hello. They're talking about a 50-cent Canadian to US dollar before we see an 80-cent. That is cause for concern. You want to talk about inflation, folks? That will be massively inflationary if our buying power drops like that. But this is, we talk about bond yields. We talk about, the price of oil, talk about the price of tea in China. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to what you're doing with your friends, your family, your community. And that's really where my guest today, Frank Legion of the Cedarbrook Group, really comes in. And we met him through a very good friend of ours, Darna Mercica, that we met down at the Orlando show for Healthcare Amplified. And this is what Frank does, is he's a finance individual, manages personal finance for people, but he takes a bit of a humanist side. And Frank, pleasure to have you, my friend.
Great to be here, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, pal. And a Cleveland Brown fan. We got a little bit of the green room before we jumped in on this.
Go Brownies.
I love that. See, I knew we were going to be friends right off the bat. He's got,
yes.
You can see over his shoulder there, he's got the insignia cups. He's ready to go. But Frank, I get this sort of sidetracked when I start talking about the Browns. We could go down that rabbit hole as far as we can. But tell me a little bit, because you're a finance guy. You're a guy that decided that money, the opportunity to make people and hedge their futures and make sure that they have an opportunity to grow their financial freedom as they get older and into retirement. But you've wrote a book.
Yes.
It's not really about finance so much as it is about kind of the human nature and what it's like to be a real person dealing with wealth. And why don't you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah. So I think, Patrick, we make a lot of the decisions that we make about money around the kitchen table.
I love it.
And it's really about the things in our lives that we love doing the most and the people that we love doing them the most with. Yeah. And a big motivation around the decisions that we make around money tie back to those things. Yeah. And so it's important to understand who those people are and what those things are, so that you can tie those or align those things with the way that you're investing your money, the way that you're saving your money. And that alignment is really important.
Well, Frank, and again, before we got started here, we had a little brief opportunity to chat. And that is exactly why I think Darna put us in contact. Because that's our story. That's Soaring Profits, the parent company of Financial Fitness here. That's our stories, telling those stories of champions. But you don't hear that much in the finance world. You don't hear, hey, how do we inform people around the dinner table? It's mostly, buy, sell, high, low, what's happening next in the market. It can be a very cutthroat entity. So sure. when you started going down this path of kind of taking the more humanist side of this, what was your thought around it?
A couple of things. So one, you want people to make good decisions about money. You want people to stay invested for the long term. And they're more likely to do that if their investments are tied to something that's very meaningful to them. There's a specific purpose behind it. So it just occurred to me over the course of my career that there are always crazy things happening in the world, right? Like and today's a great example of that. There's always something going on.
Yep.
But we don't necessarily want to overreact to things that happen in the short term. We want to make sure that we have a long-term focus. We want to make sure that our strategy is aligned with our values and our goals. And typically we end up with much better outcomes as a result of that than reacting to the short-term, day-to-day stuff that happens in the market. Trying to chase a benchmark, trying to do better than your brother or your buddy or somebody else. Those things at the end of the day are pretty irrelevant. There's not a big tie there to the meaning of our lives and what we're trying to accomplish. Those are,
well, Frank, I think that's such a story of where we are in the current financial market, is that, we had the big seven, now we had the big four, and what
right.
we got, the big one, we got one. We got half of one. It is so crazy to me. But all of these individuals, all of these managers, these fund managers are storming into one asset right now, because if you're not, you're fired. Mm-hmm. Like if you're not holding NVIDIA right now in some capacity, your people aren't very happy with you. But what happens when that sentiment swings? And Frank, you've been doing this long enough. You said you were 25 years doing this. What you've seen ups and downs in the markets. And you're talking about that long-term view. Maybe we can touch a little bit about your experience going through maybe 08, 09, what that looked like.
Sure.
And do you see similar writing on the wall? Or is this, hey, there's only up from here, Frank? Maybe that's your perspective. How do we hedge? What does that look like?
Yeah, so not necessarily 08 or 09, but certainly more like 2000.
Okay.
So if, the top 10 names in the S&P 500 right now represent a third of the performance is skewed to those 10 names. If you look at the top 10 names in 2000 in the market, so that was .com time, new, right? Transformational. Microsoft is the only name that remains 24 years later. So 10 years from now, 20 years from now, will the same top 10 names be the top 10 names? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that there are a lot of really talented managers out there, or there are indexes that you can own that will ultimately, be invested in who the top 10 names are 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever the case may be. But again, the experience matters. So Patrick, I'm 51 years old, and in my lifetime, the S&P 500 is up 10% per year.
Right.
However, 3 separate times in those 51 years, the S&P 500 has lost half of its value.
Right.
So is that an acceptable experience to you? And the answer to that is different among different people.
Sure.
And depending on where you are in your life, maybe if you're 30, sure, no big deal, right? You've got a long runway, you can get there. If you're 60 and you're knocking on the door to retirement, that might not be an acceptable outcome for you. So again, that's why it's really important to make sure that your assets are aligned with where you're headed and what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish, because the experience matters.
So Frank, there's a lot to unpack there just for the age cohort that we have going through retirement right now. We have the baby boomers that have, over the last 10 years, they've all checked out. And what are they sitting in? In Canada, for instance, we've been propped up. And again, we're just about an hour outside of Toronto to the east. And our real estate market has done fantastically well as an asset class over the last number of years. But it's sort of artificially propped up with, we have a massive form of immigration that's come in. We have a shortage of demand, we have a shortage of production. We're not building a lot of property and not building a lot of homes. And that's artificially, propping up these retirement packages. But there's some hard questions that we have to start asking, looking around when you're 25 and 30 years old and you can't afford your first time home. And we're not talking about in the States where, the average home prices are, broaching 350, 400,000. Ours are 8.
Wow.
And even with the dollar value, you're at 25 years old, there's not too many people that are walking in with enough money of a down payment to manage that. And I very much do believe that Canada right now arguably has been in a recession for 6 months, although, we're still looking at GDP on the positive side. But these are huge headwinds that we are pushing into. And especially when we look at the weakness that, is coming down with the Canadian dollar versus the American dollar, we have not seen the end of inflation in Canada until we do. And that's the unfortunate problem right now, is the Canadian consumer is getting hammered. We look at the American side of the border, and again, we look at the American consumer, the consumer cyclical products that are out there right now. Costco, Walmart, Target, these guys are getting hammered. They're just not coming through. But they tend to be staples to run to in insecurity, right? And what I'm saying is now is that we're seeing commodities. We're seeing oil. Oil, I thought, we're at all-time highs in markets. Shouldn't oil be running? Like China coming back on board after their recession. This market is like nothing I have ever seen before. It is sort of all over the map. So I go to someone like yourself that is a seasoned professional. What sort of advice are you giving your clients? What are you saying to them when you sit them down around the dinner table and have that conversation and say, you've got 30 years, this is a great opportunity. You've got 5 years, this is a great opportunity. How are you having those conversations?
Yeah, so I have to make a joke to start. The $1.50 hot dog at Costco is the best deal on the planet. So I just want to plug. I'm a member, and I just get such a kick out of that. But
are you an investor?
I'm sure that I am. Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, I like that.
So, Patrick, there is always going to be a laundry list of things that keep us up at night, that bother us, that we have to deal with. And over the course of the last 25 years in my career, the list has changed. There have been some constants, but the list has changed. And it's normal. And again, this is why it's really important to understand, what rate of return do I need to earn in order to make my life work?
Right.
What does that look like? And then you're going to allocate assets accordingly. And the way that we do it, particularly on my team, is that we work with managers that help us get to that rate of return over time.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I would love to be able to spreadsheet out the rest of my life with a linear rate of return that just happened every year, month over month, year over year. But that's not how it works in financial markets. And if we're using financial markets to help us, leverage our dollars, leverage our resources to get there, it doesn't happen in a straight line, which is, again, why it's really important to tie back your specific purpose, your specific goals, so that whether it's 5%, 6%, 8% that you need to earn over time, your experience is going to be a reflection of that. We could earn 5% in short-term treasury bills today,
absolutely,
with not a lot of, turbulence to get from here to there. Yeah. But if you need to earn 8, 9, 10% on your money to get from here to there, you're going to have to experience, or you're going to have to accept an experience where there's turbulence, where it's not going to be comfortable sometimes.
Well, and Frank, I think the confidence that you speak with, just the way that you took that question, that is the type of individual that you want managing your money, right? I'm here panicked going, okay, why is oil doing this? Why is NVIDIA? Why? And, I can see sitting across from the table with you with a scotch in hand, having a conversation about the brownies, right? I could see you calming a lot of people and going, you're not going to win the race today, pal. You've got to plan out longer term. And that in the wealth creation business, I think that is often not sexy, right? You're not going to have probably you don't have your own YouTube channel where it's bings and bangs and lights and frills and all that sort of thing, but you continue to bring people return. And that return, and in the way that you're doing it, in that calm, humanist approach, I love that idea. I think it's such a cool idea. That is so fundamentally grounding for the average, individual out there that otherwise doesn't know what to do with their money. And that's where financial fitness sort of started from, is that there wasn't a whole lot of that mid-level education in finance. You want to get a credit card? Somebody will show you how to do that. You want to get your first car? Somebody will show you how to do that. Buy your first house? But how do you buy your 7th apartment building? How do you buy, what's in that mid-level finance? And that's sort of where financial fitness kind of grew from. And Frank, I think taking the approach you're doing offers a very unique place where it's not scattered, it's structured, where it's not, hey, what's the shiny bell today? What's up? Let's chase it. I think that's a very unique position.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for the work that you do. It's really inspiring. Sometimes, Patrick, you need a scotch to talk about the brownies, but that's another.
Absolutely.
We don't have to get off topic as it relates to that.
I can see James laughing in the background. He knows the pain that I go through when it comes to that football team. So, yeah, terrible.
Yeah, but we're off to provide clarity and comfort for people around their bigger future. And to your point, there's always stuff going on. And tonight at 2:00 in the morning, some of us are going to wake up, and there's going to be a list of things that we're worried about, right? Whether it's inflation, geopolitical stuff, whether it's closer to home, like, you're worried about your spouse or your child or aging parents or your job, or fill in the blank for all the things that we can worry about. Addressing those dangers and trying to come up with a plan to help you resolve them then allows you to look to your bigger future to think about, great, if we solve these things, then what are the opportunities that we can run to? What can we gain? And that's the good stuff, right? I mean, that's what we're after. You talk about whether it's investing in real estate in your 7th apartment building, or you're investing in markets, or you're investing in yourself or your business. Those are all tools to help you get to the good stuff, whether that's travel, time with your children, your grandchildren, fill in the blank, right? For all the things that you might want to do. That's what we're after. And that's why it's really important, again, back to that alignment, to make sure that your actions, your behavior, your resources are all marching you towards that bigger future.
Frank, it's a beautiful thing. I've looked at it, and I had a mentor of mine for years, and he would call them digits on the screen, because they don't mean anything until you put them to use in whatever facet you're going to. And it sounds like with what you folks are doing at Cedarbrook Group, it sounds like you're scouting out what people's dreams are and then putting the money towards it, like putting that money to work to create those dreams. And all too often, it's just more digits that people are chasing. And that is very unfulfilling, and it doesn't get to that humanist side. So, but Frank, so writing a book, why was writing the book the way to go about it for you?
Patrick, I feel like we get to have these great conversations one-on-one every day with clients, where we talk about those 2:00 in the morning issues. We talk about their opportunities. We talk about the things in their life that work really well. And they're awesome. They're magic. Like, I get so energized by it. So to your point about like putting numbers on the scoreboard, you can't hug a spreadsheet, but I can hug a client on the way out the door after we have this amazing conversation. And so I wanted to share the story one to many as opposed to one to one. So there are certainly themes, right? Like, everybody's different. Everyone is their own unique puzzle. And that's true. But there are themes. There are things that people share. And I wanted people to be able to see themselves in the stories that we tell in the book, and to know that they're not alone, and that there are strategies that they can take advantage of to help them get from here to there. And so that was the intention behind the book.
So when I want to plug the book a bit, because I think it's a really cool thing. But when people read what you've put together there, and you sort of tear down the walls around money, all too often, so many people, and especially people that weren't raised around money properly, they weren't maybe educated, they didn't see their family, they kind of pulled themselves up from the bootstraps, as the old adage sort of goes.
Sure.
They're sort of intimidated until they realize that everyone has these same issues. Everyone has the same questions. We're all playing the same game. That's relative, right? But so you write the book, you're telling those stories. When people are reading that, what do they come back to you with? Because it seems like it would hit home in so many ways for people.
Yeah, I think the most gratifying thing, Patrick, about it is that for people that we work with that read it, and they come back and tell us how much they love it, how much it's a representation of our work together, that's really validating, because you can't fake that, right? Like, if you were to come out and say, hey, this is how we do things, and it wasn't reminiscent of how you do things, you'd get called out on it. They'd be like, this is like a load of garbage. Like, this isn't real.
It wasn't on page 8.
You're right. So, we give it away. Like, I want people, it's a how-to guide. It's a self-help guide for people that maybe you work with an advisor, maybe you don't. Regardless, it doesn't matter. It's a way to help you see yourself and where you are, and guide you through how to think about it, how to just what the mindset needs to be, what the strategies could potentially be.
I love it.
Yeah, just really excited about it. And it's been, the feedback's been great.
No doubt. So Frank, I'm going to take you back even farther. Before the Brownies left.
Yeah.
Okay. And why finance? What was it about finance that you decided that that's what I want to do with my career? When you were a young man, you were playing football and baseball and all the things. Why did you decide that this was the path you wanted to take?
Well, because I still can't be playing baseball today. Because if I could, I would be doing that. I will say that.
Yeah, your slider started getting away on you. Is that what it is?
That's right. Yeah. So I think there are certain traits in us that are factory installed that just kind of come at birth, like, given from God, they're gifts. And I've always had an interest in this from the time that I was young, in terms of being responsible with money, wanting to make money, do the best that I can with it. So it's just always been there. And in my free time, this is like fun. Like this is, so if I'm going to read something, or I'm going to have a conversation with someone, or I'm going to get lost in YouTube, this is what I want to do. Like, I wake up every morning, I have 2 poached eggs, and I read the Wall Street Journal. Like, that is fun for me. That is a good day. That is a good start to the day. So, yeah, this is it. And then, the human side came from guiding people through difficult times. So I started in the business in May of 2000, and March of 2000 is when the market peaked. And then we had this 3-year run where it was down, and people would talk to me and say that, well, I used to have this, but now I have that. And the whole risk reward thing came into clear view very early in my career, in that sometimes you don't know whether you're taking more risk than you're comfortable with until you get the statement. Yep. Or you log in and you're like, hey, wait a minute. Like, I didn't sign up for this experience and I don't understand what's happening. So we're not allowed to guarantee much on this side of the table, but I can guarantee you that we will go through another hard time and another hard time, and we'll have a fancy title, and there'll be another reason for it. And you need to be prepared for those times, more so than to get super excited about the good times. Because long term, we know what markets do over time. But in the short run, sometimes all bets are off and crazy things happen, and we need to be prepared for those times. And that's when you make your money as an investor. And that's certainly when I make my compensation as an advisor, is guiding people through difficult times.
Yeah. And I think that there's such an information gap. And I think that's what, we're sort of trying to do. And there's some people out on YouTube, you're writing books and doing interviews like this, trying to fill that information gap for people. Because I wake up in the morning, I'm the same as you. I'm watching charts, I'm watching the markets. My phone is constantly selling me alerts all day long. The average guy can't do that. I'm lucky. I enjoy this. I love this stuff. The average human cannot do what we do on a daily basis looking at this. And you're so much more advanced than I. But there's such a gap between the knowledge that I bring and, the way that I trade my assets, and the steadiness and the long-term approach that other people take. And the more that we can close that information gap on every aspect, why your money is important to you, why NVIDIA is running the way that it's running, all of the asset classes, and breaking them down for people, I think that there is so much to be learned, because it's not something that they're giving away in high school classes for free.
Right.
There is such a gap there. And that's where, financial fitness sort of comes in. We bring fantastic people like yourself, Frank, on here to try to do that. But Frank, it's been a pleasure. It's not every day I get to chat with a guy from Cleveland who's a Browns fan. And Taylor Swift next month, when is she into town?
Well, she'll be in town for the season. The schedule's out, and I'm sorry to say that I don't know the exact day.
Yeah.
But the town will be crazy about her, and certainly about her significant other, Travis Kelce, who's a Clevelander. Him and his brother.
I did know that.
Yeah, and so it'll be great for the city, for the boys to come home, and for them to share that home with Taylor Swift. So,
well, Frank, I want to thank you again, pal. It's a beautiful thing what you guys are doing there. And when I get down to the next game, I'll definitely give you a shout. How do people get in touch with you personally, get a copy of your book, and maybe be able to work with you?
So it's franklegan.com, FrankLegan.com. And the book's available on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. So,
Last question, Frank, before we leave you. If you were a young man, 20 years old, what would you say to yourself and where would you go with your career? What would career advice be for a 20-year-old Frank?
Trust yourself. Trust yourself. Be confident. Tune out the noise. In a quiet moment when you're out on a walk and you know, like in your gut, you know that this is the route for me to go. That's the answer for you. Like you know yourself, trust yourself, be confident, and tune out the noise.
Can't say any better myself, folks. From me, Soaring Profits Financial Fitness. Let's make some money together, guys.
Thank you.